All right, welcome to our new intro for user groups. Hello, everyone. This is Mike Carlo, James, and Andrew. We're all here for the Iowa Power BI user group. James, kick us off.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming today. We're going to be showcasing a new feature on the Power BI.tips website, which is called Wireframes, and it's the ability to basically build not just a template file with all of the themes and things in it, but also the ability to show where you want all of your visuals to be on the page, basically building scrims into the file, and then it gives you a file you can download and open it right in Power BI Desktop and get to work. Andrew, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I'd say welcome to our group. We have a plethora of conversations with people that work with Power BI in their own ecosystem, their own tool sets and use cases, and we're pretty welcoming to ideas across the board. Usually have some interesting chat afterwards when we have evening sessions. And this is one of them today on a tactic on the constant improvement of trying to speed up time to market on artifacts using wireframes.
That's a great summary you had there. Yeah. So this is the whole idea of, with the addition that Microsoft has made and some of the new features they brought out at Build, we're going to be able to make reports a whole lot faster now. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
All right. With that, we'll jump right in. So let me turn on my screen here, and we'll start screen sharing here. So hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Mike Carlo, the creator of Power BI Tips. I also own a consulting firm around Carlo Solutions that helps companies win with Power BI stuff, all kinds of great things that come out of our ecosystem. So with that, we'll jump right in. So just a quick context around kind of the idea of how do I create a report? Just very high level, and then we'll jump right into this concept of what does a wireframe look like, and where does this extra workload or the designing side of Power BI come into play? So an idea here that's kind of, how I build reports is I like to work with teams of people in various companies. And the idea here is when we start talking about report creation, I like to really focus on what does this report deliver? What are the ideas, or how do I ideate what is going to add value from my report? So we literally do go to an online program like Miro or a whiteboarding type application. Microsoft Whiteboard is another good application. And we just literally write down ideas on a board. Okay, what's keeping you up at night? What information do you need to know about your data? Let me kind of start there with just all these random ideas. And once we move from that idea phase of how is this idea or these different ideas, or what value can I get from my data, we start grouping these ideas into various topics, right? You typically find people asking questions like, hey, I need some overview questions. So I have a couple KPI or measures that my executives need to look at. Right, those can be grouped into a topic, I'd like to call it, that is talking about the same type of information. Typically, you'll find things that, hey, we're talking a lot about sales and operations data. Okay, there's a lot of questions around how can we make our business run around sales and operations. That may be a topic by itself. There may be more questions around headcount, or how many employees we have, or are they being used effectively and efficiently. That might be a separate topic as well. So as we start grouping these different ideas of data or insights around information, we start seeing that there are actually groupings of how this data should be organized. We then move on from that and we go over to, we want to build insights. So we basically go down to a single topic and say, okay, are there any questions that we had about our data that are similar? And then what can I do to build a visual or something on top of my data that helps me articulate that answer? And this is where we kind of say, okay, these 3 questions around, I need to know about my sales over time. Okay, great. That may be represented by a line chart, right? So now we can start talking about what visuals would optimally help us recommend a solution around looking at this data or information. Ultimately, you get on to this next stage. So once you understand why the report exists, what kind of information is in the report, you can then start focusing on, okay, what does the design of the report look like? How could I build images on a page? Where do I put the KPI cards? So there is a visual language that you're going to use when you build Power BI reports. And this is the language of how you communicate this data. And for lack of a better term, you really are building a data application. That's what you're really technically building here, is a data application around this information. So wireframing is a technique that's actually comes out of the UI UX experience where you basically build out something with no just the look and feel of it, right? There's not real data in it. You're not using real visuals. And I've actually seen a number of people across the internet starting to talk more about this idea or concept about wireframing or building visuals and including a better aesthetic to your reports. You've seen on Guy in a Cube recently talking about Figma and wireframes and how you do that to help you build reports. I saw another person on LinkedIn talking about how she was building images and background images to support that. Happily to announce here, at Power BI Tips, we've been building background images for years now. I think over 5 years, we've already been using this concept. But today, you're going to learn about how to build this all in one tool. So we're going to help you speed up this whole process in general. Moving forward here, when you build Power BI files, one thing you may want to consider as you think about this is when you're talking with a team of a lot of people, 3, 4, 5, 6 people developing reports or reports in your organization, you really want to start thinking about what is the language of my reports? How do I want to convey the messages inside those reports? So, for example, you may want to have a similar language around building tabs or tabbed data inside your reports on the report pages. There's a technique to do this, but if you're an end user trying to consume your report, I want a very consistent experience. A button should look like a button in all my reports. A toggling, and if I want to have paging or if I want to have a navigation or UI, that should look the same across all reports. So this is where wireframing can really assist us by building these templates of information or templates of reports that we can distribute to our team to give everyone a reference point to start from. Moving further here, you'll notice here, we also have other theming properties that are in addition to just making the report pages and the visuals on those pages. One thing that we definitely tout a lot, highly recommend to users of Power BI is use a theme generation tool or a tool that helps you build themes. There are a number of properties that you will spend so much time centering and changing the text of your titles in your reports if you click on every single visual and center the text and align it to the middle. So we really recommend if you want high customizations or high levels of customizability, either on the colors and or inside the different field properties on the visuals, we recommend using themes. And that's kind of where we started our whole journey with this theme generator tool. We've built this tool that helps you build themes and theme properties, but now we're going to enhance that even further with building full reports with wireframes. So once you have kind of figured out your templates for the color palettes and those things as well, what you'll likely do next is you'll think about, okay, what does the visual space look like? How does the visual look and feel impact my reporting? So you'll build your report, you'll maybe do some work on some graphics and maybe integrate with a UI UX designer. One challenge that I have found a lot of times here is when we're starting communicating about what the report should look like, there's the data team, and the data team is really good at building the report with visuals in it, but they're not always experts in figuring out what aesthetically looks the best. On the other hand, you have a UI or UX team. Most companies have a team that are designing graphics for their company. And if you focus on that team, they're great at making reports look beautiful, but they lack the ability to understand what can Power BI do. They'll build graphics or images that are just not possible in desktop. And one of those challenge points I find is in tables. Tables are very complex. There's a lot of settings with them. Graphics designers build these beautiful looking tables, but they're not really usable, or you can't really make them inside Power BI. So as a graphic designer, I need to understand what are the capabilities, what are the settings of these different visuals, and how do I turn them on or off, and what will that look like aesthetically on top of my report? So that's where the theme generator really helps out here as well. And then our last step here is we kind of merge these two, right? So we take this idea of the visual and the UI elements. We build these things what we call a scrim. It's if you understand what a scrim is from the theater perspective, in the theater world, a scrim is an image that would come behind the actors on a stage. And so it's this background image. And I just wanted to think of something that's a bit more unique than just a background image. So call it a scrim.
Much cheaper than building a set.
Exactly.
That looks just like that. They're
100%.
And similarly, for this, it's much cheaper than building it, or cheaper in terms of time than building it from hand every time.
Speed.
So
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly right. And we like that concept of being able to like quickly swap out a background on the visuals. So in this world, right, our visuals are the actors of our report, right? And the scrim is the background image that's kind of adjusting the aesthetic, the look and the feel of the report for us. So we actually, in this case, when we use these things called scrims, we're actually able to simplify or design less on the visual side, and we're able to enhance more of the background and background images on the backside of the report. So with that, that's all I have for slides. We're going to get out of slides and we're going to go straight into demo pieces. So that's the context. This is why we're doing what we're doing. All right, this is why we're building these really cool things. To give a couple other data points here as well for people on the call, if you like the idea of scrims or scrims as information or these background images, we have a number of scrims that you can either go get for free on our website. So at Power BI Tips tools/scrims. I'll put that in the chat window as well here, just to make sure everyone has that. Feel free to go to that website. You can go ahead and download some of the images that we've already given away for free. There are some sample examples of how you may want to lay out or look at your report as well. So FYI, that's out there. You can go use those today if you'd like. Additionally, if there are other scrims that we have that are just very cheap background images, you can go get if you want to start there as well. All right. Enough of the scrims talk. Let's go talk about how do we build this into an actual Power BI file. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go do a build initially. We'll just demo the tool, and then what we're going to do is going to come back and explain how it works a little bit to a higher degree. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to themes.powerbi.tips, and you'll see here we're visiting over here, theme.powerbi.tips. And you'll notice on the tips page, you'll have you're immediately landed on the page for the palette. This is the color picker. For those of you who used the color theme generator in the previous days, this is the same page you'll typically land on. You'll also notice that we have a new feature that we have Tips Plus. So the idea is if you create content on the website, you may want to save it and come back to it. So the Tips Plus subscription allows you to save your content and return back to it after the fact. It really helps for if you spend a lot of time building things, you don't want to throw that work away. So that's really the concept there. It's very reasonable to get started with that as well. I'll just quickly sign in here so I can show you all the full features of the tool. Okay.
It's worth pointing out that it lets you log in with your SSO using your organizational login or your GitHub or Twitter or whatever. It's nice to not have to create yet another username and password.
We tried to be a bit more efficient there. We didn't want to make it a lot of extra work for people. And GitHub is cool because you can control your own username and login. As long as you have a GitHub account, you can get in there. Same thing for Twitter, or I guess now technically it's X. You could log in there as well if you want. But we give you some options to get into the tool. All right, so we all know and love the idea of the theme generation portion. So we can go over here. We have some other new features. We have a color wheel that we've been adding. These are features that we use typically in the past. If we want to adjust or get some random color palettes together, we can adjust and modify these to find a good color schema to use inside our report. I can add all these to my report, and I immediately get those theme elements added. Another couple other things that we offer here for users who are using the theme generation tool, we have a ton of other items inside the theme file you can adjust. You can adjust your status colors, so red, yellow, green on the different elements. These are global colors that are applying to the entire report. And what you'll notice here as we click through these different options is, as I adjust these color options here for good, bad, and neutral, we actually have a live Power BI embedded report here on the right-hand side of the page, and this reflects an image or an actual report that with those properties applied, you can see how it would look inside a report. So instead of making good green, we could make it our blue now. If we want bad to be a different color, we could shade it something else. And then if we want our neutral color to be like a gray, we can do that as well. And so that immediately you'll see the changes being implemented on the report in real time. That gives you that comfort of, okay, I understand what feature I'm adjusting. I can now see the interactions directly in the report. We've also added things for icons. So another thing you can do that's really cool inside a report is you can add a whole bunch of icons as well. So if you want to, we have over 8,000 icons on here. So you can, can just search for tool, and it'll give you a whole bunch of icons that are related to tools. When you click on one of these icons, you can then adjust the color of them if you need to, and then you can rename them as well. And then you can add it to your theme file. So these can then be directly accessible inside your theming report. So if you're adding icons on a table, if you're trying to use red, yellow, green, if you want custom things in there, we have 8,000 icons that you can pick from. So just really a neat feature there as well. You can always edit them after the fact and adjust the colors or the naming later on if you need to continue to tweak your theme file. Lastly, the last section around theming things is focusing on global or visual level properties. So if I click on this stacked bar chart here on the left-hand side of this visual, when I clicked on the stacked bar chart, it will then render a stacked bar chart for me using my color palette that I had originally placed inside the report. And now I can start adjusting additional things here as well. If I want to add a legend, I can, and then it will render this visual with my legend applied, all the visual properties there automatically for me. Things that I like to just kind of default set, particularly around the bar charts in your X and Y axis. You can go in here in your X axis and you can remove your title. So we go have all the items here. And I'll also note here, Microsoft, take note. You'll notice all these settings are in alphabetical order. So if you know what you're looking for, you can go find the letter in alphabetical order and turn on or off the things that you need here as well. So I can turn off the title on the X axis. And then I can go modify to the Y-axis as well. And then I can also turn off the title there as well. So I can turn that off additionally. So that'll just simplify my chart view a little bit. You can also adjust styling properties on the visual, on the background images or titles or headers. One thing I don't really love is the default naming for all the titles on the reports. So you can also go into the title section of the report and you can even adjust the title text. Chart, if I could spell it right, chart title, and then you can center that. So we'll make sure we show the title always. We may want to add it to a bold, and then maybe we'll align it to the center of our report page. So now what we can do is this: every time we see a bar chart, we can now have this be the same pattern we use every single time. And maybe I want to increase the size of that a little bit so it's a bit bigger as well. So these are all styled properties of this chart type. These same properties also exist at a global level. So this is just defining the properties for a single chart. If you click on this little star option here, these are all of the global properties across all visuals. So if we go up to this upper level here, we can define again the same things. This is all settings, all visuals rolled into one large list. So the same thing we can do, we did locally there on that one visual. We can go back to our title. We can again align it to the center. We can make it bold, show it by default, turn up our size to 23 or 24, and then we can add this as chart title. Same thing here. Now what this will do is, now that we've set these features globally, this will be applied to every single visual. So if I click the stacked column chart, you'll also notice the chart title has been centered and made in the middle there as well. And with any other visual we use, you'll notice that the titles of all visuals that we're clicking on are now automatically adjusted to match that same experience. So we can see that our wonderful pie chart, which I do not recommend you using, also has the same title properties as well. So many of the visuals are covered today. You can edit them in real time and adjust them as needed. And again, now these are all can be saved. So let's just quickly save our theme just so I don't lose any of my work here. If I click save, it will now capture all of these theme properties. All right, cool. This is half of the build. We just talked about the portion of building the visual side of things. Let's go into the wireframe section. So this is the brand new portion of the tool that has recently shown up. Now this portion I think is incredibly important. This is different than a theme file. These are not theme file related items that we're building here. What we are doing now is we're using a new format called, and I'll draw it here on the screen, Microsoft in, I think it was in build in March of this year. I think that's when it was. Microsoft has released a new format called the PBIP, Power BI Project File. Now, we'll go into this a bit more later, but this is the technology we're using. We're using something that Microsoft has developed, and the Power BI Project file type is actually a series of lots of little files, and it's used for Git and Git integration. It's going to make your report building experience simpler. But now with this feature set, we're now able to programmatically build a report here in our tool, save the output of that, and then reuse it and adjust it as we need to. So now we're able to truly build a template without any data attached to it. So let's go through the features of this tool. First off, you'll see that we still have our same menu at the top here. This is the name of our file that we're going to build here. If I click the preview button, this will download the PBIP. So this is a downloader. You download the actual project file. If I want just the theme portion, this other button here is just for the theme. And then if I make any changes, I can then save this to my profile. So this saves all my work so I can always come back later and edit it. On the left-hand side, you'll see this is my list of report pages. I have the name of the page down below, and then I have the size or the standard size of the page listed up here. Now, you can change the size of a page to whatever you want. We're just noting to you what kind of page it is. This is really handy because a lot of people, I would say probably 95, maybe even 98% of the time, anytime I work with a user in Power BI, they're almost always using the default setting for reports. But to be clear here, you can get really creative with the size and how the report is laid out. You can totally adjust this. And this tool makes it so fast to be able to adjust that. So for kicks and giggles here, let's add a couple more pages. If I click the plus sign here, I'll add another page. The page is currently highlighted, and then I can adjust the length and width and height of it. So if I want a square page, I could do 1,000, or actually, let's go 1,000 by 1,000. And so now I've just adjusted this page, and it will now make a 1,000 by 1,000 page for me. Oh, hopefully here. Oh, I have it ratio locked here. Let me just unlock my ratio. 1,000 by 1,000. And so now I get a square page. So now this page is now in square in format. And then also for other pages, I still have this 720 by 2080 page size. You can even quickly adjust it or rotate it. So if I want it to be a landscape page or portrait, I have buttons to automatically adjust that. If I click on the page, I can again name them however I want. So I could name this overview. And I can do that on the right-hand side of the page here by changing the naming convention. So overview right here on the right-hand side. And so that will then rename the visual or the page itself. So that'll just update the name here. Also, if I want to just rename the page directly, I can just click on it and then rename it right here. So this would be page 1 maybe. And then on this page here, I'm actually going to make this my release notes or notes that I care about for this report page. So just call this notes for now. And then I've renamed my page. Now, again, as I like to build reports, I like the notes page to be more of a longer page because I'm going to have series of notes stacking up on that page. So I can then highlight that page. I can then rotate it really quickly here by using this button on the right-hand side to move it into a portrait landscape like that. And then I can adjust a number of other options as well. I can change the standard sizing. I could make the page hidden. So I can actually click the hidden icon over here on the right-hand side, which will actually hide the page. Another option that's available here is you can change how this page looks in Power BI Desktop. So there are 3 main settings for how a page is rendered in Desktop. You can either fit the entire page on the view of Power BI Desktop, or you can fit to width. And I think there's one more, the actual size. So in this notes page, I'm going to fit it to the width. That means the full width of the report will be extended from left side to right side, and that way the length of the page will actually scroll down below. So I actually can change how that formatting works inside the context of the Power BI report. All right. With this, we can even adjust other properties. You actually have the ability of adding a background color. So I'll go here and I will slightly adjust the gray of this background page. So now I can have the entire background color of that page be grayed out. And then you can also upload an image, which we'll do here shortly as well. All right, so that's just kind of the overview of how do I manipulate and rearrange pages. Oh, I should show that too. I can just click and drag a page and it will automatically rearrange where the pages go very quickly there as well.
That's so much better than the actual UI in Power BI Desktop.
Well, this is why this is so cool, because this is we're focusing on builders, right? People who create content, right? What's the fastest way I can make a report without any data implied? This is the whole goal of this, is to be fast. So
yeah, Mike, I would just add a couple notes of things observed, like even having used some similar tools. I mean, this is very centric to the features that are in Power BI. So you have an additional value proposition, being able to change other attributes as they become available, like subtitles, things like that on visuals.
Yes.
So that being coupled to the actual feature development in Power BI is very useful, very beneficial.
Yep.
And also, traditionally, these are completely siloed activities.
Yes.
Where the wireframe gets developed, it goes through its own approval process. It gets completely scrapped afterwards. It's just a PDF type artifact afterwards. Whereas here, it can be more of a living, breathing document in your source control.
Yes.
And you can show evolution in time. And you can also have the UI UX developer working in tandem with the report developer, which, I mean, anybody who's been in the Power BI space for some time prior to the new tabular model definition format knows the difficulty of these items.
Yes. And I'll also echo here as well. There's this concept of the model and then the thin report, right? So if you've been around the Power BI ecosystem at all, you want to build this data model that has the right linkage of tables, the relationship. So this tool is not addressing anything model related. We're only focusing on the thin report. The idea here is, to your point, Andrew, like that's a great note. We're focusing on the build experience. How can I build the thin report side? And this is an activity that can happen totally independent of data model building, right? The requirements for this are entirely separate than the report build. And so that's why we think this is going to be incredibly powerful for people, because now we can have two people working on the same file. One person can focus on building the data engineering and modeling. Another team can focus on the UI, the UX, the story of the data, and building this common report side. And this should happen fast. You should build a lot of these and get people's feedback and figure out what works and what doesn't work. Okay.
A quick point of clarification. I do want to point out that this is not limited only to thin reports. You could absolutely use this to create wireframes for a thick report. If you are making a report with its own data set, this will still work for that. So it's not limited to 100%. Thin reports only.
And that's a great point. And I will say, as one who works very heavily in the thin report and thick report space, I focus my attention on the thin report because it's a bit easier to manage as a team, but it could totally be used in both ways as well. Mm-hmm. Great point. Awesome.
I had one more question there. So is there support at this time, or do you have thoughts on the mobile layout experience as well being a match to the desktop experience?
Yeah, so I don't really love the Power BI desktop mobile experience. And so I almost never build mobile pages inside a Power BI report. What I typically do, and this is why I like this tool another way, is what I typically do when I build a mobile experience, I will build either a separate thin report that's only mobile related. And in that separate thin report, I will build more of my pages to be more portrait in mode. And then I'll usually make my pages maybe the right length, because the idea here is in the Power BI experience, I'll make the page width, I think I have found like around 600 width is a much better width height. And then the height of the report page, you can then adjust that to be whatever you want, right? 1,000 pixels, 2,000. It doesn't really matter. But I find that I typically build more pages like this, a very narrow but yet long version of a report, because that allows me to build more visualizations. And the way that mobile works today is you literally just drag and drop visual elements, and you can't stack them, you can't layer them, you get a lot less of an experience. So I will use another thin report that would be more focused on an entire mobile build. So I typically control that separately, as opposed to going in and trying to build a thin report normally.
That's a really good point, because like moving anytime, even though the mobile layout has been updated, you find yourself having to create duplication in the visualizations anyways. Say like if you wanted to add a custom background to the mobile side, you have to do a lot of gymnastics to do it. You have to have a full background image on the page itself to begin with is one of the only ways to do it. So that makes a ton of sense, and you're not living under the constraints of the scroll length on there as well. For some reason, you have infinite scroll on the dashboards, but you don't on reports.
Which is boggling in my mind. Like, why would you limit me? So again, I don't really love the mobile building experience. I typically build my own reports separately to focus on how do I want people to interact with that mobile experience as well. So yeah, that's typically what I'll do. Let me delete that page for now, and we'll jump back in here as well. So one thing you've seen me clicking on here a couple times that I've kind of shown my cards here a little bit. Okay, it's cool that we can build pages. Great. Maybe I'll add a couple more page colors here as well. So let me add another page color here that we see. And I'll add another page color here. Maybe a light blue will be something that would be interesting on this page. Okay, so now we have multiple pages with different colors. We are now able to jump in And so we go into this now directly, and we can now click on the little visual icon. So we have some icons here. If I want to duplicate the page, I can here. If I want to hide or show the page, I can use this icon. And if I want to edit or go into the page and actually add visuals, I can do so as well. This is the trash can to remove the page. Clicking on the visual icon will take me directly into the page. And now I have the actual page shown up. And now we have another whole new experience. On the left-hand side, this looks like a bunch of visuals. So now what we can do is we can actually go get your visuals and drop them on the page where they belong. Again, we're really focusing on speed to deliver value and build things for users. So if I'm on the report page, I can press the keyboard key of V for visual. Immediately we get a visual showing up. So we're making shortcut keys to make this incredibly fast. If you want to know more about the shortcut keys that we've made, we have a little information button over here in the upper right-hand corner of the page. The arrow keys can move your visual 1 pixel at a time. The shift arrow key moves your visual by 10 pixels. The alt plus arrow key will shift your visual 50 pixels at a time. And then you have the a shrink and a G, an S and a G to grow and shrink the pixels one at a time. You can delete it just by using the delete key, or V adding a new visual. So this is cool. This is something I've always loved in desktop, but sometimes doesn't work very well. I can grab the visual and drag it around the page, no problem. I can snap it into the upper left-hand corner, and by using my shift arrow keys, shift down, shift over, you'll notice that on the visual locations, I've additionally adjusted the pixels, moved the image over by 10 pixels. You'll also notice here, all of my images everything here is in whole numbers. So this is another thing you can't do in desktop very easily unless you type everything in. Desktop does not give you the ability to drop in whole numbers of where visuals live. So this gives you really precise control on how I want to adjust visuals. So I'm going to go again, put my visual up in the upper left-hand corner. This time I'll use the Alt key. I'll do a shift down. Nope, let me click the visual again. Alt down, Alt over. So that's a 50 pixel border between the top edge and the side edge. Awesome. If I want to increase the size of the visual, I can then grab the corner here and I can increase the size of the visual right there by dragging and dropping it. I could also go up here and just manually type in the widths and heights of things as well. So if I want my visual to be 1,000 wide, I can just hit enter on that. It'll make it 1,000 wide. If I went 300 tall, I can hit enter on that as well. So now I can really dial in the positioning of this visual on the page. I'm going to click off onto the page here. I'm going to click V again. I'm going to add another visual. And so now I have a second visual, and now you've also noticed we have adjustment lines. So you can see that the hover line is applying. So you'll notice here, when I zoom in close, the line will appear saying, hey, I'm going to align you to this edge, but it's not dark yet. And as soon as I bring the visual closer, you'll see that it's actually aligning. So the visual color here actually adjusts the closer I move to the edge here. And the closer I get to the edge, it'll actually mean when it gets bold like that, it's now going to snap to that edge. So if I go here like this, you'll notice that this is saying I'm referencing that edge, but I'm actually going to snap to this edge. So just some more interesting visual mapping properties. Again, more like a UI, UX designer would like to see on here as well. So I'll do this, I'll snap the visual there, and the visual will snap to that left side. If I want to move the visual up to the edge here, I'll go right up here to the top corner. And again, I'll use my Alt key, Alt down arrow, to move 50 pixels away. And then I can adjust my visual as well. And then I can just stretch it out here so that it matches the same length as the other visual. And then I can adjust my height again, 300 pixels as well. Whoops, let's do 300, enter. And there we go. So now I've got my visual the exact same size. And it's the same as changing with visuals. So if I want to switch it to a pie chart or donut chart or a column chart or any other visual type, we can just adjust those immediately and the visual will automatically change. So again, very similar experience to desktop, but gives you additional properties there as well. Another thing that we're doing here as well is we're able to adjust the individual visual properties. So we made some property changes earlier with visuals previously. What we're doing now is we can actually click on one of these visuals. And if I click on one of the visuals, you'll see I have the width, the height aligned here. I could lock the position of this. By locking it, I can't move the visual anymore. That's one thing we can't do in desktop. There's no ability to lock a visual in place, so you don't accidentally move it or nudge it or select it anymore. The locking position will allow you to do that here. We can also enable the background, and we can then even add a border color as well. So if I leave the background on and change the transparency to 60%, you'll see that the image or the visual now has a transparency represented on the back side of that image. So this is a way to build contrast between the back part of your page and the visuals themselves. And this is on a per visual setting. So if I want to adjust this to another visual, I could also go turn the background on and change the visual to 60% as well on this other visual. And now I have two transparent backgrounds. So it's going to bleed through any edges of that visual will bleed through to the background. The other thing you can add here is you can add a border directly to the image, and you can change the color of that as well. So I'll leave it here like a lighter gray, and then you can adjust the number of pixels on that border as well, so it gets larger in size or not on that image as well. So you can see the rounded corners on this one are right here. We can add rounding corners on the visual itself directly. With that, we basically have built a page in our report. We can then go back to our main view of pages by clicking on the zoom out button, which is up here in the upper left-hand corner. We zoom out, and now we have a visual representation of that report with the visuals on it. If I want to, I can duplicate that page multiple times, and now I get multiple copies of it. I can then rename them as well. Page 1, we'll just add some other things in here. So now I have a multiple pages in my report. Great, we've built a report. We're done. Let's save it real quick here so we have it for later if we need it. And now what we can do is we can download the entire Power BI project file. So now I click on the download PBIP project button, which is listed right here. And we note that this is in preview right now. So Microsoft supports it, but it is in preview by Microsoft themselves. So what will happen is I'll get a file, and I have it downloading to my desktop here. It will download to your computer the name of the file to your computer as a zip file. If I right click on this one and extract all the data, it'll extract it to my desktop here where I have the folder. And then I can then open this up in Explorer, and that will show me the different files that come from this object. So I'm not going to go into too much depth on what's happening inside this Power BI project here, other than to say is this is the data set that's built with this. The report side is built anything that defines the report, the pages, the visuals, the theme objects, anything else is built inside the report. This project comes with a Git Nowhere project already included. So if you're ready to upload this to GitHub or Git, you can automatically use this immediately. And then to open this project, you open the demo PBIP format, and we also include a little README on how to use this as well. One thing I will note that you need to know about before you get into desktop, before you open this PBIP file type, inside Power BI Desktop, you need to make sure you turn on a preview setting that Power BI has enabled. You go to the File, you go to Options and Settings, you go to Options, and the setting you need to turn on for this to work is inside the preview features, you need to turn on Power BI PBIP save option. So this is the option that is used to be able to open the PBIP format. With that option being turned on, I can then immediately close out a desktop, and I can just double click this file here. So if I double click the PBIP file, it will immediately open up the file and load it for me right inside desktop. So here's
Microsoft
desktop.
needs to give us a setting that lets us like just say, look, whenever there's a new preview feature, just automatically opt me in, and then I'll turn it off if I don't want it.
That's true. So you'll notice right away, if I have to zoom out here a little bit, but you'll see here's my home page. This is my notes page. So all the pages have been named as I named them in the tool. You'll notice I already have the background image applied. So you can see I have that light gray applied here. And this is the background versus the foreground of the page itself. There is no data. So if I open up the data ribbon here on the right-hand side, this file is loaded, but there is no data applied here. And if I move over to my overview page, we see we get immediately our visuals on the report page. So these are the visuals as we have laid them out on the report canvas with our appropriate spacing. So our spacing has already been applied. And then our border, and you can see very closely here, our transparency is also being applied there as well. So this is basically it. You've now built your sample file. I have my overview, my other page, which are identical. Page number 1 is also there as well. Here's my sales page with a blue background. And then we have our other data with a white background. So we've been able to basically build an entire report without actually touching Power BI Desktop. Again, focusing on the design, the look, the feel of how things live on that page. this is all fine and dandy, but we really want to make our report pop and really be very impactful for our users. So instead of just using this as a very simplified version, we actually want to add images or background images that are going to be much more impactful to these pages, our scrims. So let's cancel out of this. We're going to go back over to our tool. Hopefully somewhere I put it. There we go. So we're going to go back into our tool now, and we're going to start a new project. So we'll start a new theme file. We'll go back into our wireframes. So this time we're going to make this one off of what we have a sample file we call sunset. So we're going to build a new report here. Now what we're going to start with is we're going to go into an individual page. So I'll click on my page and then I'll go upload an image. So what I've done is I've actually built some images inside a visualization program. Now I built these in Adobe Illustrator, but you could build them in Figma, you can build them in PowerPoint. It doesn't really matter where the images come from. And I'm using an actual design program so I can get SVG images out. SVGs are very crisp. They store the data of the objects on the page. And so when it loads into Power BI Desktop, one, they'll be loading faster because there's less code to them. And then two, they are infinitely scalable. They will scale to whatever size page you want, and they will always be very sharp and crisp. There'll be no resolution images or issues. Yep. This is a newer feature that Power BI has added around the ability to add a SVG as a background image to any one of your pages. So I'm going to start with this main dimensions item. I'm going to open this one up. What you'll notice here is if I go into building visuals now, what I've done is in my design program, I've added some dimensions, basically some leader lines that define for me where visuals should go on my report page. So this is going to help me build where the visuals go and literally dial in the number of pixels by pixel where the visuals will need to live. So I'm going to start by adding a bar chart here. I'm going to drag my bar chart down here, and I'm just going to get it kind of close. And I'm going to grow the size here a little bit like that. So I'm close, but I'm not dialed in yet. So now what I can do is I can go over here and I can say, okay, the width of this visual should be 930. So I can just type in 930, tab, boom, done. The height should be 600, 600, tab, done. The X position should be at 290, 290, done. The Y position should be at 60, done. So what I've done now is with a couple clicks, I can literally just read the visual or the background image and drop the visual on the page exactly where it needs to go. It's positioned pixel for pixel perfect on that page. I'm going to leave the background enabled, and this time I'm going to actually drop in a little bit of transparency. Let's go 75% transparency on the background, and that way I have some of the background image bleeding through the visual itself. I'm going to click on the report page again. I'm going to add another visual. Let's add the new card visual. So I'll bring the new card visual here. I'll put it over here on the left-hand side. It'll snap to the top of this one, which is great. And then I'll maybe drag it and grow it so it fits over here on the left-hand side. So again, it's snapped to the bottom. So immediately it's already aligned to this 660 mark here at the very bottom of the page. And now I can, again, click on the visual and then adjust the position of that visual as well. So if I click on the visual, the width should be, I think it's 190. 190 is my width. The height should be 660 minus 60, which should be 600, which is correct. Our X position will sit at 60 as well. And then our Y position would be 60 as well. So we're right there on that first corner. So basically I can define that. I can change my transparency to 90%. So that changes the transparency of the background. Or in this case, I probably don't even need it at all. I can just turn off the transparency altogether. So there's no background at all. It's just a visual on the report canvas. So this is one way of building things. I could also use other cards as well. So if I don't want one card over here on the left-hand side, I could also grab this one and shrink it. So I can grab the lower left-hand corner, and I could shrink this visual to fit in that top square. And then I could just duplicate it multiple times, again, snapping it together here, right all the way down this page. And I can just kind of somewhat align them on my page. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time building them exactly here. I can even use my arrow keys to nudge it. So if I select the visual, I can nudge it one pixel at a time to kind of really dial it in on where that visual should go. So I can duplicate it again, snap it in here, and then I can nudge the visual using my arrow keys to really dial it in here as well. So now I've got multiple visuals on this cards on this page. Cool, but this is just, I don't want the numbers on it. Like, how do we fix that part? So I'm going to go back here to my main page. And I'm going to rename this page here. Instead of page 1, I'm just going to call this template. So this is the template page of where we're starting from. And now I'll just hide it because I'm not going to use it in my actual report. But now I can then duplicate the page multiple times. And now I can then add or adjust any other pages. So I know I have an overview page and I have one color for each section here. So I could actually say my main page is going to be the overview, and we'll turn this page on. And then template number 2, this will be the different colors across the page. So this will be my yellow page. So yellow, and then I'll add a couple more here. Yellow, I think this is going to be orange. I think we've got another one here for pink. So I'll rename this one pink. And then we'll have a purple one at the very end here. So I'll duplicate it one last time, and purple. Okay, we've got all of our pages laid out. I can go in and now I can start editing each one of these pages. So I can go in to this, click on this visual. I can remove the background image and now upload my own image. So now I'm going to add the main page right to that. Boom. So that removes all the markings. And then for the yellow page, I can turn that on, click on the yellow page, remove the background, upload another image. For the yellow icon, which is this one here, open that one up. The orange page, we'll turn that on, but then we'll edit this as well. So click on the orange page, remove the background image. We'll add our second item in the list here, the orange-ish color looking thing. And then we'll go here to the pink page, turn that one on. Again, adjust our background. Go here to our third item, the pink one. And then our final object here, we'll turn that on for our purple color page. And then we'll remove that and upload our final image like that. So now we have all of our visuals and on each of the pages. We've built our entire report. If we wanted to adjust our color palette, we could. Let's go over here to the color gradient page and we'll just pick some random colors. Something that might look good on this. Okay, I'll add all these guys for now. It's good for now. And then we'll go back to our wireframes. And that's it. We've now built a page with multiple backgrounds and images in the back there. And we will now download this project file. And that should then bring us down to our desktop. We'll extract all of this information, extract it all. Done. And we'll open up our Sunset Power BI project file. We'll open that up right now. And then with that, desktop should load up. And then we'll see that all of our pages have been applied. We've built all the cool stuff in here. And so we have our template page, it's hidden. And then we go through each page, overview, yellow, orange, and pink. You'll see all the colors in the background are modifying themselves. So now we've built the structure of the report. And now all we are left to do is to go back in and we can say, let's go grab some data. So I'll go to my OneLake Data Hub. We're going to go grab our star model of information. This will now, we've now taken this report and we could have loaded our own data and make it a thick report. But what I did is I connected to an existing data set that lives in PowerBI.com. And now I have all of my fact tables, my calculations, and my dimensions available to me. So now I'm able to focus on now building the reports or the visuals inside the report now. So for each of these visuals, I can go in and now I can now add whatever I want on each of the individual visuals and or additionally style them. So this one is the new card visual. So on the cards area, I can actually change the fill, turn that off. And these are things that you could customize later on as well. You could even adjust callouts and change the colors or text of this as well. So if you want the label on or off, if you want to change the color of that as well, you can do all that. So that way the card adjusts itself exactly to what you want. These are all things that can be themed as well. So I just, quickly build in this report for you. We can get our sum of cost of goods, and then we can put our overtime on here as well. And I can build my visual. Or if I want, because I'm in desktop now, I can also adjust this if I don't like that look or feel. I can immediately adjust and switch my visuals out in real time. And with that, that's pretty much as fast as you can build a report. So in the last 5 minutes, we built a template. We took a template file. We added a bunch of images to each of the pages. You can then dial in each of the visuals. So now on each page, you can go in and tweak and or customize it for whatever your needs are. You can then, again, it's just like desktop. So you can copy paste visuals. You can move things around just like you'd want it to. And then it makes it really fast for you to kind of get ideas down on paper and figure out what you're building. With that, that's kind of like the whirlwind tour of what this new wireframing capability is. I haven't really been keeping track of the chat window here. Any questions in the chat? The only question I see is
we had
coming
one that
from
came up, and I
Yeah.
already answered it.
Okay. So, Mark, I think you asked a great question around what is a thin report versus a thick report, or what we call a data model and a thin report. It's just how you handle multiple PBIX files and how you manage where the data lives, or if you're building a data set with a live connection to PowerBI.com. Excellent. Andrew, Drew, James, any questions from your side? What do you think about here? Any initial reactions?
You pretty much already answered. I was going to ask you what the deal was with the mobile pages, but you answered that before I even got a chance to ask it. So.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great. So there's a
Do
lot
you
of other.
think,
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you think that this tool is kind of a compass towards best practices? Say, if you don't delve into dynamic layering or get into crazy bookmarking, are those things you're looking to add more support to, or is it
That's a great
something
question.
that you would be trying to steer someone into using, like navigation to more easily modifiable or maintainable pages themselves?
100%. So what I'll say is all that stuff is on our roadmap. Right now, we're primarily focusing on getting some of the basics done, right? So building visuals on a page, getting those laid out, right? We're really trying to focus on this experience of how can I quickly build as fast as I can visuals on a page and really dial in this experience, right? So this is really our main focus right now, is to make this experience as simple and fast as possible so that everyone can get a report built within record time. So once we get some of these basic things covered, our next goal will be to adding a lot more other things. How do I layer objects? What does a bookmark look like? Can we build an automatic flyout panel programmatically? Like give you some templates, because now we can control the build of the entire report page programmatically. Like we know what to do. So simple things like adding bookmarks, objects that hide and show themselves when a bookmark's clicked or not clicked. All that is now known because of the PBIP format. So the PBIP format is still defining how all this works. And we, as the developers, can now build any kind of integration with all those deeper elements. So stay tuned. More to come. We're going to build a whole bunch more additional features around this. And we're going to keep trying to pick the most challenging visual building sides of Power BI and automating it, making it easy for you to build. I mean, I could totally imagine myself saying, hey, I'm going to build a page navigation, or maybe you want an object on the page that has a whole bunch of slicers in it that you hide and show, right? Slicers on the page, people love them. I hate them on the report page because it takes away all the landscape of my report page, right? And maybe users don't want to use the filter pane in desktop. That's totally fine. We're already thinking about how we would programmatically build that stuff for you to make it easy and super fast for you to build multiple things. Another area we're looking into is right now you have multiple objects on a page. Desktop allows you to group them together. So why not let you group them in our tool as well? So we're going to start even thinking about how can we do grouping of objects, and again, pre-build a lot of the stuff that you'd normally have to manually build inside desktop. Yeah, those are great questions. Any other questions?
I love that. I love the idea that it's, the higher the pain in the butt index, the higher it is on the like your roadmap index, right? So
that is exactly how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to approach it. It's like there's plenty of things that are actually fairly simple to do by hand in Power BI Desktop, and maybe those things are not the first things that we ought to focus on. It should be the things that are like the most difficult.
Exactly right.
And time consuming to do. Exactly
right. And that's kind of really the approach that we're taking here is what is the most painful parts of working in desktop? We're going to build and design features for that to make it super easy. And this by far is even just stubbing out a report page like this. I mean, I added 3 more visuals here. Great. I could go back and remove this or move these to other pages in my report. I can easily go back through, and now this becomes part of my downloadable project or asset.
Could you see this? I work in a realm where we have a lot of Mac users that want to develop with Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of maybe a different flavor than more of a working in a Microsoft type shop, if that's what your business is.
Sure.
So could you see this using APIs and turning this into more of a publish direct to your source control and being completely a web experience when you actually go make the report, and you can
Yeah.
edit the model in the service so that you don't even use the desktop tool someday.
Andrew, you're hitting on literally our entire roadmap. I mean, you can imagine here, right? So let me give you 2 comments around this one, right? So if you think about how this was working here, right? We're building a PBIP file. So let me this is, I think, Andrew, your question dives into a bit more detail around what is the PBIP format and how can we better utilize that for anything Git related regardless, right? So let me just minimize this. I'm going to minimize desktop. Let's focus a bit more on the individual files themselves here. So let me pull up my VS Code here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring VS Code up, and we're going to actually look at the folder of what is being created when we download this. So we're going to bring our sunset folder in here. And what this is going to do, it's going to show me all the individual objects. So this is the definition of the report right here. The report definition lives in this folder, and the data set definition lives here. So if I now go into this PBIP file format, you can see immediately it's in JSON format. So Control M here. Let's just turn it JSON so we can see it's pretty. This is the JSON format. So this is really all it's saying. This is a pointer file to say where's the definition of all the other parts of the file. If you go into the report section, we have the report definition, which is also incredibly nasty to look at. So let's Control-Shift-F that one. Oops. Let's Control-Alt-F. Format this. So this is the definition of the report. So there's a configuration section. There's, items here. Here are all the different SVG images that are linking inside this file, right? We have a whole bunch of visual containers. These are all the visuals and where they're positioned on the page. Look how nice those numbers are. Nice whole numbers, which is great because you can't do that in desktop. The numbers are always decimals. So if you think about this and everything that's contained in this files, you could essentially link all of this to a Git repo. Also, if we can create the file and download it, we're working on some tech that'll let you be able to upload an existing thin report or an existing data model, right? We don't care about all the things you care about here, but imagine you've already checked in this file into Git somewhere else. Maybe you want to go peer at that. Maybe you want to go into that project and sign in through your Git provider and go get the project and go connect directly to the repo. If we can export out all the different objects here, we can definitely read them all in and use them and manipulate them as well. So we haven't, again, this is one of the more advanced features elements of this is where you could really think of this as at some point in the future from a Mac user standpoint, right? If I go back to our builder here, there's nothing in here that's required to have desktop on your computer at this point. You could literally connect the entire experience here to a Git repo, pull down a version of your report, make any kind of changes, positions, options, things on the report, and then literally manipulate it in a way that would give you access to the report definition and then publish it back up to your Git repo. So the whole concept here is to think about how easily we could do that. It's on our backlog. We're thinking about how we would integrate with that. There's a lot more technical challenges around integrating with Git and letting companies allow you to connect and edit or things inside Git directly. But you could definitely see how this would more easily integrate with all the creation things or elements around reports. All right. With that, it looks like we're right about at time. With that, I will stop sharing my screen. We'll jump back over here to the group of us. Thank you all for taking some time today to learn about how to build reports. I hope you like wireframing. This feature you can go try today. It's in limited feature format when you if you don't pay for the Tips Plus subscription. So just to be clear, you can play with the features. You can build 2 pages today already with the tool. It is free. So visit themes.powerbi.tips. You can go build stuff right now and experience how to build things in the tool. If you want to have all the features, we recommend you go get the Tips Plus subscription. It helps adding more features and lets you save your work as well. I'll come back to it later. Any final words, James or Andrew? All right.
No,
Thank you all
for joining us. Yeah. Looking forward to the next one, and we'll probably have maybe we'll have an evening session and have some dialogue with attendees.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you all so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for running.